Welcome back, everyone. Last week we examined Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness as a colonial text. In other words, we explored the way that his work represented encounters between European colonizers and Congolese Africans. This week we're going to be continuing to think about colonialism by reading Jhumpa Lahiri's Interpreter of Maladies. Then we're going to shift gears by reading Zora Neale Hurston's Sweat. This story will introduce you to our next thematic exploration, which is the representation of African American experiences by African American authors. So, first, we're going to be examining how colonial and post colonial writers discuss race and culture. Next, we're going to examine how American writers discuss race and American culture. In this video, we'll give you some background information on Jhumpa Lahiri, the author of The Interpreter of Maladies. Jhumpa Lahiri is a contemporary Indian American author. She was born in London on July 11th, 1967, to Bengali parents. She grew up in Rhode Island, but made frequent trips as a child back to see extended family in Calcutta. She received her BA in English from Barnard College and then a PhD in Renaissance Studies. But despite all of these academic degrees, her profession really is that of a fiction writer. Um, Now, because Lahiri is a writer who often writes about Indian or Indian American characters, we might consider her as part of a wave of post colonial writers. Writers who, like Chinua Achebe, have origins with those populations that were colonized by Europeans, such as Bengalis, Hindus, Nigerians, Congolese, and others. Now, colonial writers like Conrad are interested in creating fictions about colonized peoples in ways that, as Achebe argues, shore up that sense of inequality that becomes the foundation to colonialism. But by contrast, post colonial authors like Achebe and Lahiri examine the effects of colonization and decolonization on colonized groups. So Achebe's writing, for example, explores African history in order to demonstrate the value of African culture and the consequences of colonial expansion and exploitation on the African psyche. Lahiri's writing often explores Indian Americans' relationship to India, in particular the way that these characters respond to immigration and assimilation. Lahiri's writing uses realistic settings and characters in order to explore subtle tensions between people and quiet interior emotions like loneliness, unhappiness, hope, or love. Now, while her writing is concerned with Indian characters, the issue of her characters' cultural heritage becomes part and parcel of other fundamental experiences with things such as love, family, marital problems, alienation, and self discovery. And we see many of these themes present in The Interpreter of Maladies, which is a short story within a much larger anthology of short fiction that Lahiri published in 1999. This anthology won the Pulitzer Prize in Fiction in 2000. If you have a chance, I would recommend that you read the entire compilation because it's really terrific. Now, the story that we read for today is about the interactions between Mr. Kapasi and Meena and Raj Das and their three children. Mr. Kapasi is Indian. He studied languages with the hope of becoming an international interpreter, but now he works two jobs. He works as an interpreter for a doctor whose patients speak only Gujarati, and he also works as a tour guide, which is how he meets the Das family. Now, the Das family are a second generation Indian American family who are taking their children sightseeing. The Das family are Indian in terms of their familial heritage, but are really Americanized. And the children in particular appear to have distanced themselves from their Indian heritage, even though, by their own admission, their parents have retired to India. And the story is really, in many ways, one about cultural interpretation. Mr. Kapasi is translating the local culture and landscape to the Das family. Mrs. Das offers a flattering interpretation of Mr. Kapasi's profession, and Mr. Kapasi becomes interested in Mrs. Das and imagines having a future correspondence with her. Mrs. Das then admits to him that she has had an extramarital affair several years ago, which has produced a child. And this information changes the way that Mr. Das interprets Meena. So, as you read this story, I want you to think about the type of cultural exchanges that are going on, as well as the way in which the Das family and Mr. Kapasi are interpreting and misinterpreting one another. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you on the discussion board.